Hey there, friends. Pete here once again, and it is time for the weekly video log. I'm glad you decided to join me today. It is Wednesday, March 5th, so we are approaching the 2 month anniversary of the channel. Um, I'm really excited. The channel is very close to 100 subscribers, which to a small guy like me is a huge deal. When I started this project back in January, I certainly didn't think about 100 people even watching the videos, let alone actually subscribing to the channel. So it's very exciting. Whether I get to the 100 or not, I know that there's going to be some pluses and minuses along the way, but it's a real big honor, and I really do appreciate that. I do want to send some recognition to the team from Living in 8 Bits, as well as to Joe Walker, who does the backlog, and the Retroware TV family. All you guys have been really supportive since the get-go of the project, and I know that the list is even longer than that. But if it wasn't for you guys kind of spreading the word and kind of helping to grow the enthusiasm a little bit, these videos would basically be just for me. So it's kind of neat to share my memories and experiences and thoughts with a bit wider of an audience. So thank you guys very much for that. As an addendum to episode 16, which I shot yesterday, I do hope that some of you who are in and around the New England area are giving serious consideration to going to this year's event at FunSpot. It would be a great opportunity to meet a lot of you. I know that there are going to be a lot of the usual suspects at FunSpot this year who are far and away a lot more skilled and talented at arcade games than I. But if you haven't been to the American Classic Arcade Museum before, I know I tried to paint some kind of picture yesterday, but all of my words and all of my experiences can't match up to what it's like to actually be there in that room, in that area, with all of those games from the 80s and 90s kind of staring you in the face, with the ability to actually play them, not just see them or watch them on YouTube. It's a pretty big deal. So I hope that you'll consider going. I'd certainly love to see you out there if you do go. Again, I'll be out there all 4 days of the event, so I hope you'll join me. So the video log, usually what I do with these, aside from talking about updates to the channel, which I'll talk about towards the end, is share some recent additions to my library, which I'm going to do with you now. Couple of the games that I got that I showed on my last video log, the two Tengen games, Afterburner and Shinobi, neither of those worked, which is unfortunate. I would have liked to have had those in my library. As I pointed out, having Sega games working on a Nintendo system back then, and even today, is a little bit unusual, if you will, if you remember the whole Sega versus Nintendo console war of the early 90s, and how fiercely competitive the two companies were. So having Sega arcade games on the NES was just, it's, to someone like me who's been through that kind of thing, it's more of a novelty than anything else. But either way, neither of the games worked. I had to return them. I'm very grateful to the staff over at Game Depot for being understanding that the games didn't work and letting me swap them out. So I got some other stuff. The first thing I will show you are the NES games. The first one, and I didn't know a lot about this. I picked it up because it looked like a shooter. Is Alpha Mission from SNK. I believe this is from 1987. It has some similarities to Atari's Xevious in here, or Namco's Xevious title. Lots of slowdown too. It's rudimentary, but it gets the job done. I've played worse. So that's Alpha Mission. The next one on the agenda is American Gladiators, which I got because folks like Matt, the LJN Defender, and a couple of other folks on my Twitter feed were talking about how cool this game is. So I'm like, okay, I saw it. I figured I would grab it. It was only $4, and I didn't pay anything for it. It was part of the even trade. What I didn't know about this game until I booted it up and played it is that the same company who created Golden Tee Golf, which I absolutely adore playing, is also responsible for this guy right here. Incredible Technologies made both, so I thought that was kind of a neat coincidence. I only played a little bit of the game. I'm still struggling a little bit with the controls as I don't have the manual for it. But I do like the how the game plays and how it represents the show, so that's kind of cool. The next one I got, and it's more out of nostalgia than anything because I had the Commodore 64 game. That was the first way that I played this, is Skate or Die. Konami did an okay job porting this over from the Electronic Arts original. By far and away, my favorite event in this is the skateboard joust, which really should be an event somewhere. Granted, you would probably get a lot of gravel rash from getting knocked off your skateboard, but still, it's a cool idea. This game, 720 Degrees, these are all the forerunners for games like Street Skater and Top Skater and Tony Hawk's Pro Skater in the 90s and early 2000s. So it's kind of neat to go way back to the roots. And this is a fun game if you can find it. A little bit more enjoyable, I think, on the Commodore 64, but still, this is a more than passable port. So I paid nothing for this. This is the other part of the exchange. Usually it goes for $2 or $3. So if you find it, go ahead and grab it. And then the last of the NES games I got is Wheel of Fortune Family Edition. Now this, unlike the Vanna White Edition that I got recently, is actually from Rare Coin It. So much like my Jeopardy games, I enjoy this one a lot. You can tell that Rare put it together just based on the presentation quality, the overall gameplay, how it works, how it feels. They did a good job with this. I want to also look for one more of these. I think it's the original Wheel of Fortune game as well, just to kind of wrap it up. So those are the NES games that I added. So I had to part with 2 and I wound up with 4, so I basically came out 2 ahead on the deal. I also got a Super Nintendo game, and it's Rival Turf, this guy right here, and I'll kind of move it forward, from Jalico. I never paid much attention to this game when it first came out in 1992, which is, wow, 22 years ago. And it's a shame. Although it's an obvious Final Fight ripoff or clone or whatever you want to call it, it's actually a lot of fun to play. I really can't say much else about it other than the fact that I just like the way that it feels. I like the way that it plays. The music is pretty good. And the game's pretty challenging. The one thing that stands out about this versus Final Fight, however, is that you're not scored based on the number of moves you pull off and the number of hits you make, but rather the number of enemies that you take down. So, for example, I think my best effort was like 59 enemies. That's how you're scored. It's almost like the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles arcade games, where Konami based it on enemies killed rather than moves executed. And I thought that was pretty neat. So that's a cool way to keep score. Rival Turf. This was actually $2 I got this for, rather than the $4 that you see in front of you. So that was kind of nice. Moving on to some original PlayStation games. The first one I'm going to show you, because unfortunately this is the one that disappointed me the most, is Croc Legend of the Gobos right here. This is from Argonaut Software, and Argonaut, of course, was the team that came up with Star Fox for the Super Nintendo. Granted, the members of the team changed between between Star Fox and Croc, but still, I thought that was pretty significant. For a platform that has a lot of great platforming games, Pandemonium, Spyro the Dragon, Crash Bandicoot, this is not one of those great platformers, at least not in my opinion. There are all kinds of camera problems. There are some really weird idiosyncrasies with the controls that I didn't like very much. So even though the game is kind of cute and has a weird resemblance to Plock in terms of the characters having really wide eyes, and just some of that design, that's what it reminds me of anyway. It's not anywhere near as good. I got this for a couple of dollars, and it'll kind of just sit in my collection. I don't think I'm going to play it very much, and that's too bad. Okay, the last two. And these are long box games. These I love finding, especially complete in box, because the long box games take me back to the early days of the PlayStation, of course, when these were the ways that you bought them. You didn't buy them in CD jewel cases, so it kind of stood out. It's almost like what 3DO games were in those long cardboard cases, and then there was a jewel case in there. It's something that is unique to the platform. At least I thought. So the first one is Bust a Move 2 Arcade Edition, which is an Acclaim game, and they licensed this from Taito. Always neat to see the artwork on these. The guy with the matchsticks holding his eyes open. It's pretty neat. This, I believe, is from, it's 1996, so it's not a launch title per se, but it's still pretty early in the PlayStation's lifespan. It's Puzzle Bobble. I mean, there's really no way to put a fine point on it. There are puzzle elements of the game, of course. You can play solo, you can play time attack, or you can play against the computer. Some of the sound effects you'll either think are really cute or will drive you up the wall. So kind of take that as it were. But of course, getting this in long box form was kind of nice, and it does have the instruction manual in there. So I'll even open it up, kind of turn the disc so that it looks like I just bought it. The only thing that's missing on the inside is just the styrofoam insert to kind of keep the disc straight. That's what goes in here and across the disc. So that's not here, but everything else is here. The manual is in okay shape. It's a little bit warped, but still manages to get the job done. And then last but not least, and I'm appreciating this more than when I originally owned it in 1995, this is Wipeout right here from Psygnosis. This was one of those launch titles that was always thought about when the PlayStation first came out. You think of launch titles, you think Ridge Racer, you think Tekken, you think Destruction Derby, which is also a Psygnosis game, and you think about this guy. Wipeout just oozes futuristic style. The way that the tracks are laid out, the hovercraft or the racing craft that you use, the techno music that plays in the background. This game is it's very stylistic, but it's still a more than competent racer, even to this day. Here's the back of the case. You can see it with some of the screenshots over in here. And then if you open it up, this is kind of unusual as far as this kind of game. There were two kinds of long boxes. There was the hard plastic long box that I showed you with Bust a Move, and then there's the cardboard long box that has the disc, has the little insert in there, and it also has the manual that's not kept to anything. It just kind of flails around inside the case. So that's what the cardboard long box looked like. I have Bases Loaded 96, which is the same way. I showed you that in a Pete Plays episode, and I also have Philosoma, which is also the same kind of cardboard long box case. So those are the most, there we go, back on camera. Those are the most recent pickups and additions to my library. I'm very happy to have those. I have tested them all out, and they all work, so none of those are going to be going back anytime soon. So what's next for the channel? There is one more episode coming tomorrow, which is Thursday the 6th. And it's going to be about video game retail. I'm actually giving you guys a little bit of a heads up before the video is shot tomorrow. As I've talked about in past videos, and I've talked about on Twitter and in my writing, I am a multi-tour of duty participant in the gaming retail wars. I worked for FuncoLand for a while. I worked for an independent video game retailer for a while, and I did several tours of duty with GameStop. So I want to talk about, not so much GameStop because that's more modern, but I want to talk about my days with FuncoLand, my days with Fantasy Realms, which is a great, was a great independent buy-sell trade store that I enjoyed spending a lot of time at. And I'm going to talk about those tomorrow. As far as a Pete Plays episode for this week, I'm not too sure what my schedule is going to look like. I'm also starting to get ready for Fun Spot, trying to plan out the games that I'm going to be playing while I'm there. Wizard of War back here, that's one of the games that I'm messing around with. There are also a couple of games in my title compilation discs that I'm playing as well. I may put those on tape, or I may do something completely out of the blue. I had one request to play a little bit of ActRaiser, which I may do, if not in the near future, then sometime down the line. I also had a couple of people say that I should go ahead and try and play Ninja Gaiden on camera. That would be a long Let's Play if I do indeed do that, but it's something I'm considering. Some people want to see the Angry Pete. I don't know why you'd actually want to see that on camera, but hey, if it's something you're asking for, then it's something I'll definitely consider. But as for this week, as for shooting a Pete Plays for Friday, I'm kind of on the fence on that. I have to see what my schedule looks like, and then I have to try and think about what game I want to put into play if indeed I do decide to do that. Then next week, which is my spring break week away from college classes, that is baseball week next week. So if you're not a fan of old school sports video games, especially the baseball games, you may be a little disappointed with the content next week. But I am spending time attacking 3 different areas for baseball week. I'm going to do 2 specific episodes next week that are going to be dedicated to 8-bit baseball games, and then 16-bit ones. And those will be Tuesday and Thursday respectively. I'm also going to do a Pete Plays on my favorite baseball game ever. So chew on that for a little bit, try and figure out what game that's going to be. And then I'm also, for the blog, and I'll put a link below if you haven't visited it before, that's where I'm going to do my top 10 baseball video games of all time. Well, I shouldn't say of all time. I should say top 10 baseball video games up to the PlayStation 1, let's say. I don't want to go too far into the PlayStation 2 and especially beyond. There are great baseball games for those systems. They tend to be a little bit more sim-oriented than arcade-oriented. So I'm going to stick mainly from, let's say, 1988 or 1987 to 1996. We'll kind of keep it in that range. But there will be a top 10 list on the blog next week that breaks down the baseball games. I'm hoping you'll give those a chance, even if you're not the biggest sports fan. Sports video games are certainly a part of retro video game culture. There are more retro sports games than just the Tecmo Bowls and the RBI baseballs, and I'm going to get to some of those baseball games next week. Then beyond that, once I get back to classes, the regular episode shooting schedule will continue, and I have some interesting ideas set up to take us through March. Then in April, that's when the short review videos are going to start to come. I'm going to do a couple of those a week, where it'll be less than 5 minutes, and it'll talk about a game or games that I've played recently, what I think of them, and whether I think that whether I'm happy that they're in my library or whether I kind of wasted money on them. I'm not necessarily going to make recommendations, I don't think. I'm more just going to talk about them from my point of view, and maybe talk a little bit about things in my life that were going on at the time when I was playing that game pretty often. So we'll see how those go over, and that'll be happening in April. The other thing that'll be happening in April, I can't believe it's almost April already, that's my birthday month. So what I usually do in April is I tend to take looks back. I like to do more signpost type videos where I take a look at each console or certain games for each console and things in my life that they represent. For example, I've talked in the past about the NES and when I got that for Christmas in 1990 and how that really began my love affair with video game consoles. That's pretty significant. I'll be talking about the Nintendo 64, the PlayStation, and the Super Nintendo at least during April, so I hope that you'll tune in for those. Thank you again, all of you, for watching, for subscribing, for reading the blog, for checking out my Twitter feed. The last couple of months have been really, really fantastic and have given me all the motivation I need to keep this project going. When I first started doing this project, I didn't know how long I was going to do it. I do have a propensity sometimes if a project isn't doing all that great, or if I feel like I'm doing it just for myself, I tend to let things go a little bit. But here I am, 8 weeks in. I'm doing at least 2 videos a week, except for the week that I was sick. And I'm enjoying it as much now, if not more, than when I first started doing it. I'm making little changes here and there. I'm putting my, for technical purposes, I used to shoot videos on the other side of the room underneath the Nintendo poster, but that was a little bit too dark. So now I've changed, so I'm more in front of the screen, and plus I can do Let's Play videos this way, where you can see a little bit better as to what's going on and see me in the shot. So I'm always experimenting, I'm always improving, and that's another thing that drives me forward. So thanks everybody. Thanks again for helping me get very close to 100 subscribers. I got my fingers crossed that, or let me do that on camera. There we go. I got my fingers crossed that I'll hopefully pass that number sometime in the next couple of weeks. Again, thank you to Living in 8 Bits. Thank you to Joe Walker. Thank you to the Retroware family. Thank you to all of you who create videos all the time. I have so many people that inspire me daily, from James Rolfe and the Angry Video Game Nerd, to JonTron, to to Pro Jared. I mean, I could list this on and on and on. The Game Chasers, for reigniting my interest and passion and hunting down games at cheap prices. I mean, I could go on and on and on, make an entire list of videos trying to salute everybody who's made me take an interest in doing this. So I thank all of you, and maybe I'll do one of those videos. Maybe if I get to 1,000 subscribers or something, like my buddy Matt did, doing a thank you video. But we'll see. So until tomorrow, again, thanks everybody for watching, and I will see you on the next episode of Retro Unscripted. Until then, take care.